So they have.
Michigan, this is Barack Obama. I want to talk with you about the Alyssa Slotkin I know. Alyssa is a true public servant who has dedicated her career to serving the American people, no matter who is in the White House. I saw that leadership and character up close. Alyssa is the kind of leader we need. Tough, independent, and effective. She'll get the job done. And she will make you proud.
I'm Alyssa Slotkin, and I approve this message.
Neighborhood beautification. That's very important to Detroit. It's very important to block clubs, organizations, and people who live in the community. We got started with 2 lots and a vision of a treehouse center. Because if we can take these blighted lots, Detroit give us grants to be able to do something with them that the community wants, it's a plus because we're bringing our neighborhoods back to where we want them to be, where they should be. All because I live in Detroit.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. My name is Saeed Khan, and if you've been anywhere in the Metro Detroit area this week, you know that there have been the lights of the Aurora Borealis. There have been the throwing of shade on Detroit by former presidents, and everything in between with the Detroit Tigers, the Detroit Lions, and also a bunch of great concerts that have come through. But there is so much more that we can talk about and that we will talk about today. Joining us is president of BME Consulting and former director of Wayne County Public Services Department, Beverly Watts, attorneys Joel Sklar and Bill Seikaly, labor and community activist Barb Ingalls, veteran journalist Nancy Derringer, and of course, back from the new year, co-founder of Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel. Well, I guess before we talk about the hurricane that hit Florida, let's go ahead and talk about the hurricane that hit the Detroit Economic Club yesterday. Former President Donald Trump addressed to that august body and decided that he had his own editorial and harbinger of Detroit. Allan, I think you have video.
The whole country is going to be like, you want to know the truth? It'll be like Detroit. Our whole country will end up being like Detroit if she's your president.
That would be a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think he thought he was throwing shade on Detroit, but given Detroit's recovery, we can do so well, and actually the rest of the country can do so well. So I don't know. Is this maybe his way of conceding the election?
I was at that. I covered that. I was there at the Economic Club. I mean, it's just amazing how tone deaf.
Wait, hold on. Did you shake his hand?
No.
He embraced him.
It's so funny. He went on for 2 hours. I left after an hour and a half. I just said, I can't. That's it. I got enough. And I wrote 2 stories about it. And one was, I mean, he's just blathering. I was sitting across from another radio reporter who I know. And after about an hour and a half, we both looked at each other and just started laughing. I mean, he was just going on and on. But the funniest thing was that he bragged about, he was just in the New York Times. The New York Times had a reporter there. And he was saying, yeah, the fake news, New York Times, Peter Baker has written a story about, mentioning again that I didn't win that Michigan Man of the Year in 2013. And I told my people, get me some evidence. And here it is in 2023, the Oakland Press, it says I won that award, and everyone clapped. And so I came back and I started, doing some fact checking and stuff. And the Oakland Press, I go to find their story, and they had a correction saying, we incorrectly said he won the award. He was the keynote speaker, but he did not. So I wrote a story about it, and then I sent it to Peter Baker who I used to work with. and he wrote a story about it, saying about the open press correction.
Didn't
they
Peg
clapped?
McNichol,
Oh my God.
Peg McNichol, who wrote that story?
Yeah.
Didn't she also then tweet something about how she had to like apologize for this thing, years later, and that it was her mistake that she called him Man of the Year?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow.
I think Peg McNichol I got hooked up with because she was one of the women in the Lessenberry story.
Yes.
So,
yeah. She was one of two women. She did a great job on that. So.
Barb,
Alan, how did the crowd react to the Detroit remark? Did they clap?
You know what?
These are money people. These aren't normal human beings.
I have to be honest. I was taking some pictures too, and I didn't quite catch it at the time, but then afterwards I realized. So I don't know, but the crowd was basically. I mean, there were some. Jocelyn Benson. Jocelyn Benson was there. Dingle was there, but for the most part, like when he talked about him winning the award and that he had proof, there was a pretty big round of applause there. So I would say the crowd leaned. I mean, John Ricolta was the one who introduced him, who was his ambassador, and he couldn't get his nose further up his ass.
Right.
But
So
it was a
the crowd
receptive.
who thinks that because when you say Detroit, we all know what that means.
Right.
Yeah.
He thinks,
Other articles that I've read said that the response to those comments were very muted.
Yeah, that was my impression. Most of those, but when occasionally he said another thing and people really clapped, and he said, the stock market is doing well, but I've talked to experts who say that it's only doing well because I'm doing well in the polls and people think I'm going to win.
What he's been saying
And
that
people clapped. People clapped over that. They were
right. And I have a feeling that even when they were muted, they probably felt they were just too embarrassed to clap on the Detroit remark, but doesn't mean they didn't agree. So it's just it doesn't surprise me at anything he does, but I mean it's just insane at the number of people that still support him.
So Alan, I know you're not a doctor, but I do suspect that because you travel a lot, you have stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. Gauging
guilty as charged.
Gauging.
I want to know where he's going.
Gauging from what you heard. Some people attribute what he said about Detroit to the fact that he probably doesn't know where he is. Did you think that he seemed to be out of it or checked out?
I wouldn't say checked out, but it was the same like meandering and wandering and it's so funny. Like people started slowly like trickling out, and he goes, "Nobody leaves when they say people leave," but he said, "I saw one guy leave, but he was only going to the bathroom. He came back." Well, they won't let you once you leave. They won't let you come back. So.
I wasn't there and I didn't watch it unfold on Right Side Broadcast Network, whatever it was, but I saw some clips from it. And I was struck by a couple of things. Number one, he looked ghastly. I mean, and somebody on Twitter said, well, obviously the lighting director hated his guts and like put him under a green light. He looked terrible. He had some weird color of makeup on today.
Yeah.
And
a lot of makeup.
But then, when you speak publicly and you do it often, you understand that you have to kind of craft a message to a different audience, right? I was there in 2016 when Trump appeared before the Economic Club. And that was the one where he was interrupted 25 times and Rashida was there screaming. They were all like frog marched out. It was really very amusing. But he had a speech, okay? And he had a teleprompter. And he said, and he would talk to this teleprompter, and he would talk to the middle teleprompter, and he'd talk to the right side teleprompter. But it was a speech, and it was coherent, and it made sense. 8 years of these fucking rallies and dementia, and whatever is going on in his brain has really scrambled his circuits, because the one I saw, he came out, he has walk-on music, which is appropriate for a rally, but maybe not for the Economic Club, but they played it anyway. They put that Lee Greenwood song, God Bless the USA. He walks out, and of course, it's not a rally, so he's not making his way onto stage, via a fairly long path. He's basically walking from backstage to the podium, which takes like 5 strides, right? And then he stands in front of the crowd. He walks past the podium and stands in front of the crowd until that song comes to the first
Very
chorus. And that was 1 minute and 20 some seconds. And he just stood there. And it wasn't like the crowd was on their feet roaring or anything like that. It was just, it's like he was following the rally script. He doesn't know how to do this stuff anymore. Or go ahead.
I was going to say that struck me as very weird. It's like, what is he doing? He just stood there like this, like, here, admire me. And the song just keeps playing. And I'm like, what is going on here? I mean, it was just the whole thing was just so surreal. And, it's funny. I tried to get, reporters are trying to be like, oh, I'm objective and stuff. They all, I got a couple of them to laugh and like, it was just.
Right.
Crazy.
I mean, it was cringeworthy. It was Fidel Castro meets Elvis meets the World Wrestling Association. I mean, that's kind of the vibe that it was.
Wait a minute, Nancy, with a tan, a bad tan.
Yeah, with a really bad tan. I mean, he was like, it looked like corpse makeup. It was very strange.
Yeah.
Alan, you should have gone up there and changed the song to "Walk On By."
I want to know what's with the incredible comb over. I've seen these pictures on Facebook recently with the wind blowing his hair. Look at when you're bald, you ought to just be bald.
I agree. Bill, I totally agree. And what?
Yul Brynner.
Can I just make one little?
But Bill, you can say that
Hold on,
because
Nancy may be saying. Wait.
Your starting position was different.
Say that bald is sexy. We want to give her the opportunity to say it.
No, I'm not going to say bald is sexy. I'm going to say
but
Bill, bald is sexy. Bill, of course,
bald is sexy. I'll say.
I'm going to say that women over the age of 40 have to worry about everything. Yeah, there we go.
Here we go. Back in the male modeling stage.
About every part of their body. Their breasts fall, their ass collapses,
everything.
Their stomach, if you've had a baby, your stomach and sticks out more than it did before. And sometimes you even have thinning hair, because that's got a hormonal thing too.
Yeah.
Men have to worry about going bald. And it's like, if I can make peace with all this disaster going on in my body.
That's being reductivist, Nancy, especially because men have to worry about the expansion of certain glands later on.
The belly.
Yeah.
It is not.
I own a man in his 70s, and
that doesn't show. Okay, prostates are inside your body. It's like all the rest of this is.
I have a video on in relation to you.
They say Milton could be a storm for the history books if the state of Florida still had history books, which they do not. Milton, at the time we tape our show, had been downgraded from a Category 5 hurricane to a Category 3. For those who don't follow this sort of thing, this is a Category 1 hurricane. This is Category 2. Here's Category 3, Category 4, and Category 5 will blow the roof right off.
God, that looked like Tropicana Field in St. Petersburg. But Beverly, I think. Yeah, Beverly, I think you had something.
Yeah, I was going to say, going on that comment back to the event yesterday when he made that comment about Detroit. I think for me, it goes back to the pattern he's always had. He's probably looking at some numbers, or he's anticipating. I call it greasing the biscuit, as he see maybe not Michigan but Detroit, and that he may not get the numbers and get the most votes out of there. So he's already laying that foundation when he makes comments like that, like Detroit, which I don't like the comment, hey, but I love his process and theory, because we want Detroit to turn out, in droves for the Democratic Kamala.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Bill.
I agree completely with what Beverly just said. And unfortunately, I want to add the dark side to it. I actually think that it'll help him with outstate voters.
Yeah.
That the people who upstate and outstate who would vote for him, have such a warped and perverse view of Detroit,
right.
That these comments just help him. And they say, see, he can go into the belly of the beast and say these things.
He's so brave. Yeah. Right.
But I also think he looks in the audience, he sees a lot of white people dressed really nicely and thinks they don't live in Detroit. They'll know what I'm saying, not realizing that there is an allegiance, at least to some of those people, to the city.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to remember, it's a lot of Republicans now that's against him. Those numbers are growing. I mean, there was an article.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that on the motorcade from the airport to downtown, he was probably cowering, below the seats on the ground as the SUV went by. So who knows? Well, speaking of the hurricane, Milton came through, and it seemed as though it was a little bit more tempered than the dread of it being a Category 5 and a once-in-a-generation storm. Having said that, it made landfall as a Category 2 and did create substantial damage, including to said Tropicana Field, which, by the way, could really have used it. Probably the worst stadium in the entire Major League Baseball system. But I thought what was very interesting was the politics that was surrounding it. The whole idea about Governor Ron DeSantis, whether about taking calls, part of this dealing with the prior Hurricane Helene that had just gone through. But the idea that it didn't really inhibit him from having FEMA standing there when FEMA was giving money. But then also this whole idea about how FEMA's budget was cut by a Republican Congress, partly at the behest of Trump. How do you think that the hurricane will, if at all, play with the politics? After all, I think Trump supposedly was giving hotel rooms for free to utility workers, and Elon Musk was allowing Starlink or SpaceLink, his internet service, to be provided so Floridians had communication.
I don't think they're going to Florida anyway.
Elon's charging for, if you could get the Starlink for free, but you have to buy software. So what I'm reading is that was more bullshit.
Wow.
We'll see.
Yeah, I just don't understand how Trump's handling of this ends up helping him. I have two observations. One is I just don't see how the nonsense of, it's only a $7,500 check. Yeah, but that's just to get you on your feet. It doesn't include everything.
Right.
And that there's one for each storm. I don't see how all the bad mouthing of FEMA, which if you're going to look at an organization within the government that people like, it's FEMA. They do great work. They come in, they bail you out quickly. I mean, they just do great work. So I don't see how that's going to help him. But more importantly, and I do think it's just his efforts to delegitimize everything about the government.
Yeah.
But more importantly, if you look at where the storm went, and according to at least one of the women in Congress, Democrats control the ability to do this. This has really impacted Trump voters disproportionately, and I think it will also adversely affect him.
Yeah, by the way, Bill, FEMA is also my favorite leg bone. Nancy.
I just want to say, having co-hosted a talk radio show in Indiana in the 90s, I can tell you that FEMA is not universally beloved. That there was, like, before the internet, there was a whole, remember the black helicopters thing? And Camp Grayling is a black site, and that's where they were parking the black helicopters. That kind of the whole Michigan militia movement that led to the Tim McVeigh. A lot of that had FEMA as a major part of it. FEMA's putting together, like, prison camps. They're going to put us in. All these people, like, watched Red Dawn and thought it was, it was a documentary or something. It's crazy. So, but you're right in that people who actually deal with FEMA and have, and I just saw something on my Facebook from one of my friends who had a personal, emergency due to a weather event. And he said, he walked in and they gave him $500. Now it's up to $750. They just put cash in his hand. Take care of yourself. As long as this lasts. Here are some forms that will help you, like, get through the rest of it. They did do great work for him, but people who are ignorant, they don't know. So,
yeah, that's what I was going to say. FEMA has improved in the recent years. I know, remember the storms a couple years ago, 2021. This summer, I was in a hair salon and a FEMA person walked in because they're going back and wanting to know who was damaged by that flood a year ago because they wanted to instantly give you money. And we were looking like, wow, if your basement's flooded, your business flooded, and this was this summer. So FEMA is improving. Whoever the leadership there, they're changing that brand. I agree with Bill.
They
well, can we thank
George Bush? I mean,
I'm sorry, what?
It's Katrina.
George Bush did such a terrible job during Katrina, and who was it that he put in charge of FEMA? His buddy
Brownie.
Heck of a job, Brownie.
Heck of a job,
I mean,
Brownie.
it had to get better. I think Obama put a lot of money into it, but I would like to point out, and I am not sure that Democrats can control the weather, but the red states got a flood, and we got the northern lights. Make up your own mind.
Who just got that?
Well, but the northern lights, I believe, were caused by the Jewish space lasers, Barb.
However we get them, I'm in favor.
Putting on a show. So Marjorie Taylor Greene would say, "We got that because of that." And but I don't know. I'm starting to sense, Barb and Beverly, by locating this shift being at the time of Bush and Katrina. Are you actually saying then that the improvement of FEMA is because of Kanye West? Because didn't he shed light on this with Mike Meyer? I mean,
see, go from Bush to Kanye. I'm like,
because Beverly, I'm no longer doing inferential leaps. I'm playing inferential hopscotch. So
yeah, and you know what? I'm not for trashing George Bush anymore. When you compare him to Trump, I mean, he might have been a babbling idiot, but he wasn't a nut.
He wasn't a nut. I'm telling you, he's looking good.
I love when he was at the Trump inauguration, he turned to Hillary and said, "This is some weird shit."
I stand firm
that's some weird shit.
George Bush should have gone to The Hague for his war crimes.
Yeah. So Bush hasn't issued an endorsement, but a lot of Republicans have, and polls show that Kamala Harris's support among Republicans, particularly former Trump officials, officials in other administrations, including Bush and Reagan, are coming out much more publicly, much more visibly, and much more vociferously in not only supporting her, but also saying what a disaster to the republic is Trump. Yes, Alan.
I read an article this morning where it said that 60% of the Nikki Haley supporters had previously voted for Trump, and now the poll is saying only 45% are going to vote for Trump. So,
but are the others going to vote for Harris?
That's the thing. Are they going to stay
home? Big issue.
Oh, they said they were open to it, but we'll see whether they do. So
I don't think, Bill, they're going to vote for Jill Stein. So I think that as far as
look, there is the idea of not voting, for president at all. But people who really study this,
that's why I don't believe they're really undecided. No, I don't.
Just quickly, just a civil statement. I got my mail-in ballot at Huntington Woods yesterday. I went to get it. They gave it to me, and I filled my ballot out. It's incredibly easy. If anybody is out there saying, "Hey, man, what do I do?" Go to City Hall. You can get your mail-in ballot. You can fill it out that day and drop it back at the City Hall or the post box. So I'm telling you, I did it. It was unbelievably quick, unbelievably easy, and I'm encouraging anybody who's watching, if you haven't voted yet, get it in early. It's going to save you a lot of hassle.
This is a really interesting point that Joel raises, because this was what, Proposition 1 or 2 of 2022? Was it 22 or I forget?
I think it was
that established that essentially made it easier to vote. And it established, the 9 days of early voting, which is just a godsend for a busy person. No reason absentee. It just made everything about voting easier. Okay. Now, Democrats, this was tested, of course. Well, the early voting hadn't come in then, but the absentee thing was tested in 2020. But if Republicans had 2 or 3 brain cells to rub together, they would be telling their elderly, terrified voters to be doing this stuff, you know, but they can't back away from Trump and his it's all fraud. Yeah.
Right.
They might be listening, Nancy.
I mean,
but Nancy,
the last few times I voted, it's like, why haven't we always been doing it this way?
Right. It's so easy.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, the campaign spending for 2024 is approaching $16 billion.
I know.
That's across the board, presidential as well as congressional and all other seats, propositions, referenda, etc. And yet, at the same time, vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance was here in Michigan talking to the crowd about how he's against EV mandates. And also blaming immigrants for rising housing costs. Bill.
You know, we've never talked about this on the show. There is no EV mandate. I mean, there's no such thing anywhere.
Right.
But
I've been reliably informed by Hillsdale College that there is.
That's pretty animated. I mean, I think you recharge your battery overnight to get that out.
I mean, this has just been one of the greatest hoax.
Yeah, it's like the economy's bad. The economy's doing incredibly well. Our numbers are good.
Trump, you see all these ads that Harris's EV mandate's going to destroy this country. It's such, and they cite such credible sources like the Washington Examiner. For they do. Look at Rogers' ads about Slotkin supporting the EV mandates. They cite the Washington Examiner as the source. It's bullshit. If they conclude it based on the mileage requirements, the EPA requirements for mileage of vehicles, that the only way they can meet them, and this is the auto industry talking, is by going to EVs. It's not the only way. It's nonsense.
Right. They could just stop making so many F-150s and gigantic, SUVs and everything else. But I understand.
Hey, woman like you wants to take away my truck. Gonna come from my gun neck.
Now, Peter, relax.
Bill, you can get away with that accent now. The old picture, I didn't see it.
Alan. Yesterday, just to talk about some of the lies going out there, yesterday Trump tells the crowd that inflation is skyrocketing, that it's double what they had predicted. And then I have in a story today that I wrote about and said, USA Today says in September, the inflation was the lowest it had been in 3 years. And so it's just, that's the incredible thing. And then people just eat up all the slop that he just puts on the plate, and they clap and they're like
programming. I mean, you got so much money to spend.
Know about inflation.
So that's the statistics. I mean, inflation is down now to a 3-year low of 2.4%.
Right.
So basically, anything that had happened that Biden either inherited or exacerbated has been wiped off the books. We've got the Federal Reserve rates coming down to the point now that I'm seeing billboards saying, "You want to refi?" So that word is sort of re-entering the lexicon.
I'm looking at the Dow today, and it's already up. It's early in the day. It's only midday, and it's up 352 points.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, Alan, those comments is wacky October. Remember that. It's going to get worse and worse in the coming days and weeks. Wacky
No question.
And unemployment is below 4.1%.
There you go. I mean, the stock market is only one part of the economy, but it's a good reflection of kind of business in general. And, the Derringers are doing just fine. So that's all I care about.
That's all I care about.
Well, if you get a 1/7, success rate on this show, then so be it.
I don't understand why the Democrats aren't doing more in advertising to counter all this. I mean, you have great numbers now. You have an unlimited budget, essentially. You're buying airtime. I don't know why you're not
I
essentially
think
positive.
I think what they're afraid of is that people say, "No, I'm hurting, and you're still telling me that the economy is good. You're tone deaf. You're not."
Yeah,
And so they've been.
I agree with Allan. Talking to some people in some campaigns that I'm not going to mention because people won't vote for the people I support. I'll tell you that there is a big concern when talking about the reality of the economy versus people's perceptions.
Right.
Okay, the economy may be great. My wages might even be up. But do you know what I pay for the price for eggs?
Right.
You know what I have to pay?
Yeah.
You know what it costs? I heard this the other day, standing next to a candidate. Do you know what it cost me to buy a junker for my 17-year-old to drive? Do you have any idea? And so for those people, who look back and say, "Hey, my dad spent $500 and got me a car I could drive for 2 years in high school."
Right.
You can't do that anymore.
Right.
So there is a concern, and I think it's legitimate, about being tone deaf to these Americans who, for some reason, support Trump. They're not, they're at the bottom level of working class in terms of income. They might be making $30,000 a year, which, to be honest with you, you can barely function on.
Right.
But don't worry, Bill, because Trump is going to go ahead and waive, or he's actually going to allow you to deduct your interest payments on your car loan on your taxes. Of course, that means you have to itemize, which might be more problematic than just taking the standard deduction, which most people in the lower echelons of the pay scale tend to go ahead and take the standard deduction. So I don't know who's going to benefit from something like that.
Well, when you get in, you really want to put your geek on about this. If you look at every single proposal that Trump has made, it so benefits the upper class income earners than the middle class income earners. Way to go, Nancy. For example, the tips. You do the tips, no tips.
No tax on tips.
Give me no tax on tips. You're not going to tax tips. Give me a break. It is clear that what's going to happen is that's going to mean that people who get huge bonuses, are going to call them tips.
Right.
And that's going to help Trump's friends. It's not going to help most.
Exactly.
Workers. You want to help a restaurant worker? My wife and I go to the theater. We have theater tickets to the Fisher, and we go to a restaurant across the street every time we go. And I looked at the waitress last night and I said, "Would you prefer your tip in cash?" And she said, "Oh my God, yes. They're going to assume that you paid me 8%. I'd appreciate it."
I started tipping in cash a while back, and waitresses remember. It's like now when I walk into my favorite Coney, they put that coffee and water down in front of me immediately. They know.
I have to say, but I want to say
restaurant?
something. The price of
Cuisine.
groceries is still
big fan of Zeph's.
Cuisine right across from the Fisher.
Cuisine.
Theater.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I love that place.
it's really great.
I love that place. One of the best places in Detroit. Can't recommend it high enough. But there's so many great restaurants.
We're full of it. No, I just want to say something. The price of groceries is still ridiculous. And I mean, eggs is stupid because eggs were never that much. And now they are very cheap again. Eggs are very inexpensive, but everything else is really high. And canned goods are really high. And even if you use fresh things, I mean, you go to the farmer's market, the prices have gone up everywhere around and they haven't come down yet. And they need to come down. And I'm not sure what the answer is, but these are real concerns. And I think the Democrats understand. And I don't think the Democratic Party understands much. I will be a lifelong cynic to those assholes because they constantly snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory over and over again. But I think that they're right to kind of go, let that sort of dissipate off, because real people, working people are spending a lot more on things that they shouldn't have to do. And Trump can wait and say word salad, and he's not going to do anything about it either.
No, he can't do anything about it.
He's worried about that KFC bucket of chicken that makes that price don't go up. So that's
wasn't there kind of a little viral moment a few days ago where some guy was talking about like what the vice president can do because Vance and
Nothing.
Trump were attacking Harris and saying, well, she's, this has happened and this has happened. And they're like, it's like the vice president has no control over that stuff.
Well, wait a minute. Trump made it clear Pence could have saved the country.
That's right. Well, what
Well,
they're asking
Charlie
for,
Ladoff talking about, why aren't we talking about all of the Iraqis who died because of Elizabeth Slotkin's bad advice? It's like, yes, she was the only person in the entire administration talking about how to run the Iraqi war at the age of like 28 or something.
Right.
If she was even that old.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Alan, why don't we go to a commercial now?
All right, let me get to the commercials here. I'm sorry, caught me off guard here.
This is Alyssa Slotkin, Democrat running for the U.S. Senate.
Whoops, wrong.
Whoop.
Love the name Skeeter.
Put up the one with Barack Obama.
Michigan, this is Barack Obama. I want to talk with you about the Alyssa Slotkin I know. Alyssa is a true public servant who has dedicated her career to serving the American people, no matter who is in the White House. I saw that leadership and character up close. Alyssa is the kind of leader we need. Tough, independent, and effective. She'll get the job done. And she will make you proud.
I'm Alyssa Slotkin, and I approve this message.
Neighborhood beautification. That's very important to Detroit. It's very important to block clubs, organizations, and people who live in the community. We got started with 2 lots and a vision of a treehouse center. Because if we can take these blighted lots, Detroit give us grants to be able to do something with them that the community wants, it's a plus because we're bringing our neighborhoods back to where we want them to be, where they should be. All because I live in Detroit.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabria, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in a home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
All right. So within that sequence of ads, we saw one of Senate candidate Alyssa Slotkin. She is running for the seat against Republican Mike Rogers. And I guess the question is, where do you live, Mike? Reports are now focused on a 720 square foot little bungalow or cottage that is where is it? Walled Lake?
White Lake Township.
White Lake Township. And no real evidence of him living there. Kind of like the Wonka factory, nobody ever goes out and nobody ever comes in. And as of even April, he was registered to vote in Florida, where he has quite a sizable mansion, which I think thus far was able to evade Eileen or Milton. Is this an issue, and is it something that can be damaging to Rogers? Bill?
Yeah, number one, I think this issue of carpetbagging is relevant, or should be. But in this particular case, for all the talk about voter fraud, you'll notice that every time that there's a real issue of voter fraud, whether or not somebody's voting in a place properly, whether it was legal, whether they reside there, the 2 cases in Macomb County that Nessel is prosecuting and Lucidio didn't, they're all Republicans. And this is amazing to me. You want to talk about voter fraud? You got a guy running for Senate who clearly illegally voted in the state of Michigan, and while he was registered in the state of Florida. I'm sorry, something's wrong there. That ought to matter.
It ought to.
It ought to. All right. Well, gosh, I mean, if that was it, Nancy.
This is something that Jack Bergman, when in his first campaign for Congress, he serves, of course, the Upper Peninsula and half of the Lower Peninsula. He's a Republican. And I think the first time he ran, Lon Johnson, who was a former state Democratic Party leader, ran against him and lost. And he tried to make carpetbagging an issue, because he said that address that Johnson or that Bergman was using in the UP was just a summer place, and that he spent the vast majority of his year at his other house, which is in southern Louisiana near the Baton Rouge. And it didn't stick then. So, I mean, you'd think, particularly the UP, where you have such a clear townies and summer people divide there, that they would be sensitive to that. You know, that, oh, here comes this guy who just is here, you know, for the 8 weeks of bad sledding that they call summer in the Upper Peninsula, you know, and he wants to be our representative, but he was elected by a wide margin, and he has not faced a serious competitor since.
I'm just surprised. How come this didn't come up sooner? You know,
it's been percolating, but ML Elric just did a really good project about it with the help of his Michigan State students. It ran on Sunday in the Free Press, where they actually staked out the house and waited and talked to all the neighbors, like, have you seen Mike at all? And it's like, no. And then Mike tried to claim the standard argument, you know, those goddamn contractors won't finish my house, you know, that kind of thing. So anyway.
And by the way, great MSU students, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a Spartan. They're great.
I think
John James, who leaped from district to district until he finally got elected somewhere. He had to go to Macomb County, you know, and John James lives in Farmington Hills.
It's a weird quirk of the House of Representatives that you do not have to live in your district. Even if Senate you do, but for the House you don't have to. I mean, you would think the voters would be sensitive to that, but like, for instance, there's a district up by Flint, and the guy, and it's solidly Democratic, but I think the Republicans felt they had to put up some sacrificial lamb, and so they led Matt Seeley of Grosse Pointe Shores, you know, buying into the ring, you know, to face the knife, and you know, he didn't even bother to move. I mean, he would go up there and do events, but he kept his house in the Shores, and I don't blame him. I mean, wouldn't
Mike Duggan didn't
to sell your house in Grosse Pointe Shores and move to Flint and then lose?
Wow.
I just want to say
how gross. That's the most Grosse Pointe thing you've ever said, Nancy.
It really is. I know.
I just want to point out with Mike Rogers, I mean, there's a lot going on with that guy, but he hates Trump, and he knew
allegedly.
Al, people I know who know him, he hates Trump. I don't think he endorsed Trump last time he ran, and he sucked it up because he knew the only way for him to win the primary, to win the primary was not to have this loudmouth coming after me and trashing me, and so he sucked it up. But it's,
what does that tell you about his integrity and his character?
Well,
zilch.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's
of course,
kind
he'll say he's Machiavellian. And Nancy, shame on you. I think the word is genuflection.
Well, that's the phrase he used in Game of Thrones. Bend the knee.
Oh, okay. Well, I never thought I'd realize this about your former colleague at the Washington Post, Allan, but I guess maybe in a bout of envy for Melania Trump having just published her book, Bob Woodward is out with his latest on said Melania's husband. Is this the October surprise that we've been waiting for? Patiently and with a certain level of eagerness. I
have something about one of the things he broke.
The Kremlin confirmed reports yesterday that during the coronavirus pandemic, former President Trump sent Russian President Vladimir Putin several COVID testing machines for personal use. Well, who are you going to believe? The Kremlin spokesman or the other Kremlin spokesman?
Very true.
See, I don't think that's going to hurt Trump, because people are going to say, wow, he outfoxed Putin by sending him tests for a disease that doesn't exist. So there's also that aspect. But I mean, has anyone gone through the book?
Not yet.
No. Not yet.
No, you've got to ask yourself this question. Bob Woodward, Carl Burstein brought down Nixon. how stupid was Trump to allow him into his office for these interviews and listen to some of these phone calls?
That was rhetorical, right? How stupid is
I know.
Trump?
Bill's trying to be funny, right?
It's not that it's that he's arrogant. It's not just stupidity. He thinks he can outfox anyone.
Right.
I mean, keep in mind also the very first of the Trump administration books was that guy Michael Wolff with 2 F's, who was essentially given free reign to roam around the West Wing for the first few months. The whole office space in there was like chaos. You know, they said the hardest challenge that the chief of staff had was keeping people out of the Oval. They would just walk in. Omarosa, would walk in with some I found a story about you in some weird website and I want to share, and it says something nice about you. Oh, come on in, Omarosa. Let me hit the Diet Coke button on the desk.
Or Mike Lindell, the pillow man. I've got a pillow for you.
That's because the chief of staff was Reince Priebus, who's got the height of a speed bump. So, I mean, they just
didn't stop anyone.
But that's true, though. I mean, and so Wolf is talking to people, and could you speak a little clearly into my digital recorder here? And the guy and everybody's talking shit about everybody else. And that first book was just a mind blower. It was like we thought he would grow into the office. He's just shrunk the office to match him. So,
I agree with Nancy about his arrogance. I think he thought like I can tame this tiger here. Come on in, Bob Woodward, and now he calls Bob Woodward no personality. Blah blah blah.
He's right about that.
Which Bob said yes. He's an interesting guy. I actually have a quick little story. 9/11, right after 9/11, we're at the post there, and people would huddle and talk about what they had and stuff like that. And I'm on the phone with my mother, and my mother says, "I just saw Bob Woodward on the television." She says, "Is he still a macher?" A big shot. So I go, yeah, he's a macher. So I go up to him and I go, "Hey, Bob," I said, "My mom just saw you on the TV. She asked me if you're a macher." He goes, "I used to know what that meant." And I said, big shot.
Oh, come on.
I have to tell you this, the arrogance of Trump sometimes worked. Tell me why Alan Dershowitz, who at one time was an attorney who I respected, now sucks up to Trump every chance he gets. It's
like Giuliani. It's like Giuliani.
He's an egomaniac too, Dershowitz. He's almost the same stripe as Trump. I mean,
he's gone off the deep end. He was, wasn't he one of Epstein's friends too? And he was so furious about being named as somebody who had sex with that one girl that he just.
It was a massage.
It was just a massage, Nancy.
He went around the bend. So,
but one of our watchers just made a really good point. Is that the people that are the diehard Trump people, the people that we cannot change, the people that we cannot get, are never going to read that book or any other book. They don't read newspapers. They watch weird stuff on their computers, and they watch Fox News, and they're never gonna. And so Donald Trump says, failing has been Bob Woodward, and they go, failing has been Bob Woodward, and they go out and they do it. So I mean, I would like to know why Bob Woodward had all this stuff on Trump before, and we're now finding out about it. I would like to have
That's always the argument in these newsroom with these hot journalism. Journalist books. It's like Maggie Haberman, she wrote probably, I think, the best of all the Trump books, it was called Confidence Man.
Well, apropos what somebody just mentioned, I mean, maybe it's not just who's got the goods on him, but on whom does Trump have the goods? I mean, it seems like we got him. God, you did Bill's picture by mistake, but thing about Epstein and now P. Diddy and Trump. So that's one of the things. Well, this week marked. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is something wrong with me? I have always just kind of been happy with regular old normal human being sex. The idea of going to an orgy like P. Diddy is said to have had, or Jeffrey Epstein is said to have had, fills me with so much anxiety that I can't even, I would have left. I mean, if I saw people walking around with taking their clothes off, I would be like, wow, man. It's
Nancy, I think people in La La Land, Hollywood would look at you and say, what?
When they bring,
I have hard enough to take your clothes off in front of one person,
right?
Much less like three
Nancy,
or four or more.
I have to now cite Anthony Hopkins in the movie Hannibal, spoken like a true Protestant.
Well, I saw two issues in the question. One was, is there anything wrong with me? That question we could talk about.
Define normal sex, please.
The other is the normal sex issue.
When we were talking about this last.
That is worthy.
It's awesome. It's an impossibility. I would be so.
It's like climbing Everest. You could do it, but do you really want to do it?
You don't want to do it, and you're getting to the top of Everest. What's so great about this? I'm fucking freezing. I can't feel my thumbs, my hands, and how do I get down? How do I leave? It's awful.
I do think that there is some worthy conversation.
When I was a sex worker back in the day, sure, things got crazy.
I'm so proud to send my sisters this link to watch us.
Okay.
Look, I do think there are some worthy issues to talk about here, and that is who does this stuff and why. And I do think that power and money is an incredible aphrodisiac.
Yeah,
and it makes people think that they can or are entitled to do things that most of us would say, look, that's a good fantasy, but I mean,
a lot of young women, though.
Has every guy I've ever talked to dreamt about a threesome? Yeah.
But this is like a 300 some. I mean,
that's
this
right.
is ridiculous.
If you ask most people, would I do it with a whole group of people, and they'd go, no, I'd be too self-conscious. Right. But if you have that much power and that much money, you think you can do things like that. You get into the issue of grabbing the pussy.
Yeah.
Who says that kind of stuff? I've been in a lot of locker rooms. That's not locker room talk.
No,
if you said something like that in a locker room, the guys would turn around and laugh at you.
No, Bill, you're right. It's power and privilege. The two P's.
Right. It's an ability to control. I mean, it's this God complex where I can do anything. I can control everybody. I can have people demean themselves for me. You know, it goes to ego, and it goes to no sense of boundaries and limitations, because for so long I've had none.
Yeah.
And so that's
Bill, I mean, you know, I don't know if it is in your locker room, but when I go swimming at Lifetime, I mean, in the locker room talk is usually about those glands that Nancy is dismissive of men having, and you know, maybe the stock market are some of the issues that are being discussed. Let's go to our final segment, Alan.
All right, hold on. I've got one little 12-second video here.
Sure.
In her appearance on Fox News' The Five this week, former First Lady Melania Trump said that former President Trump does not sleep much. Then again, she wasn't really around when he was in court.
All right.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
All right. There are plenty. Too bad there aren't more machers out there, but
so many.
Let's go. Joel, who's your schmuck?
I'm going to go with Donald. You know, I think the dissing of Detroit is completely insane. It's not just ignorance if he knows what Detroit's about, but it's a dog whistle, man. It's a clearly racist statement.
Yep.
You know, he's losing the suburbs. He's gonna lose the cities. I hope. And he's speaking to low-educated white voters who are terrified of anything that doesn't look or sound like them. And so he's a schmuck for reiterating all this stuff. Same thing with the immigration. To demonize immigrants is a sin. These, you know, this is like Yom Kippur, and for Jews, it's supposed to be an open tent, right? Everybody's supposed to be welcome in the tent. Especially immigrants, and this whole thing, anti-immigrant thing, scares me to hell, you know, to death. It's very frightening. So he's the schmuck.
All right, Beverly.
Yes, of course. Trump. I think he's going to stay on it for me the rest of the year. But Marjorie, our lovely Congressperson Marjorie Greene, really, she's talking about government control of the weather, and then she refers you to a website, NOAA, that also confirms that there's no technical modification that government can control the weather. And still the the insensitivity of the people who have lost a lot down there. Some people have lost their lives, and she's just spewing all of this. I just can't believe it. And then, like I said, she didn't fact check what she said. So she's my schmuck of the week.
Emphatically, I see. Bill.
I'm going to go international. I've got two. One is the government of North Korea, who've now sent soldiers to Russia to fight against Ukrainians. You want to talk about a despicable situation and what that portends. The other is the IDF, who've now taken out two UN outposts in Lebanon. Not the kind of stuff we ought to tolerate nor endorse. Thanks. Those are mine.
Right. Barb.
I have one would be anybody right now that is complaining about immigration. I just find it the most horrible, racist, lying bullshit. Right now, there are immigrants cleaning up in North Carolina. There are immigrants cleaning up in Florida, and the job is not going to be done without them. And so I wish they'd just shut the fuck up. But my main schmucks this week is a group called the Theo Bros. If you have read about Theo Bros, they are it's the nationalists, the Catholic nationalists, and they want to bring back, which means theologians. They are serious about the Old Testament and the New Testament, and they want to bring back public flogging. They want to end the 19th Amendment. They really like white people. And J.D. Vance has been meeting with these guys. So J.D. Vance is a joke, and everyone hates him, right? I mean, nobody likes this guy. His numbers are really low. But if somehow Trump is able to slither in to the White House, and then his brain finishes the meltdown, that's what we're going to have to deal with. And I'm Catholic enough to know what these crazy assholes are like. And it's no joke. They fear and hate women. And
the Opus Dei wing. Yeah.
They're the young Opus Dei, and these people are scary as hell. So a combination of anyone that hates immigrants and Theo Bros are my schmucks this week.
All right. Nancy.
Okay. Mine is John Ricolta, who was the MC for the Trump appearance yesterday at the Detroit Economic Club. Now,
that was one of my schmucks. But
John Ricolta is a friend of Trump. I believe he served as an ambassador in his administration. He's a big mocker. Everybody knows who John Ricolta is and his wife. That's how I first met the Ricolta family, when I was a mere Hoosier, watching his wife appear on the Bill O'Reilly show every night, screaming about Married with Children and how gross it was, and now it was a then and now a Rupert Murdoch thing. And isn't it funny how the politics make strange bedfellows? But anyway, I heard two questions that Ricolta asked, because there was a one-on-one question after the Trump Fidel Castro speech.
Right.
And the first question he asked him was, "You have so much energy. Like, how do you do it?" And then I was like, "You got to be kidding me." And then I saw another question he asked, which is, "I've met all your children, and they're such impressive people. Like, how did you do it? What was your secret to raising such wonderful people?" And honest to God, I was listening. I was like,
he was trying to be funny.
Tiger Beat magazine asked harder questions of Justin Bieber, than John Ricolta. And the thing is, he could have asked perfectly respectful, reasonable, not harassing, mean questions that would have been of great interest to his audience there. I mean, he could have asked him, "Have you run the numbers on this idea of making auto loan interest fully deductible? How are you going to pay for this? Blah, blah." He could have asked him a million questions, but instead he went full Tiger Beat. Like Allan said earlier, he had his nose so far up Trump's ass. I wouldn't even want to go.
There was a proctologist in the crowd to help.
Exactly. So Mine.
Ass man? Is there an ass man?
Yeah.
Well, Nancy, though, don't you think that Terry Rakolta was prescient? I mean, in the 1990s, she was decrying the dangers of mainstreaming shows like Married with Children, and here we are, so many decades later, having mainstream discussions of threesomes and all. So maybe she was onto something.
The children are in school when we're on the air, okay?
Saeed, I dare you call us mainstream.
You know what? If you're going to go there with the threesomes, I'm going to go even further with the mainstream. So, Alan.
I've got a couple, but I'll piggyback a little bit on the John Rakolta thing. Is that shame on the Detroit Economic Club? It's supposed to be a nonpartisan thing where you get educated about economic issues and stuff like that. It's okay. You want to bring in a partisan person, but treat them like put some integrity. I mean, there's Democrats in the audience, including Jocelyn Benson and Debbie Dingell and some other Democrats, and people go there to be treated, not to have a Trump rally. And as Nancy said, I mean, Trump stood there while the music was playing. It was just, I was looking, going, what is he doing? I mean, shame on the Economic Club. They're the schmuck of the week for me. Also, Ron DeSantis for playing games like, initially, Kamala Harris is calling, he wouldn't answer. And then his staff person said, well, he didn't answer because it's politics. But then by the Miami Herald started reporting on it. And suddenly he said, oh, I've talked to Joe Biden tonight. So it's not only that, like, I'm not going to talk to a woman and she's running for office and Trump's going to be mad at me if I talk to her. I mean, it's like at that point you say, I'm going to take advantage of this. This woman wants to play politics. Give me everything you can for my people here in Florida. But he's
exactly.
Yeah. Right. All right. Well, my schmucks, I've got to go ahead and give a couple. First of all, the schmucks who vandalized Jewish sites on the 1-year anniversary of the Hamas attack, the Jewish Federation, and then some of the other incidents, utterly reprehensible. But my other two schmucks are Qantas Airlines, which according to Dustin Hoffman and Rain Man has never crashed, screening a movie on their Tokyo Haneda bound flight from Sydney that was playing on every screen, and it was the R-rated movie Daddy-O with Dakota Johnson and Sean Penn. So even little kids of both Australian and Japanese heritage and everyone in between got an education of the person who was in 50 Shades of Grey. So that's one. And on the other, which also has to do with endangering children, 2 preschool teachers in North Gate Crossing Elementary School near Houston who were suspended for giving melatonin patches to kids to fall asleep. So although it's genius, because it's preparing them for nap time as kindergartners. It's the sleeping stickers. The sleeping stickers that were given caused some kids to start acting differently, including crying more than usual, not eating or sleeping since the school year started, which basically is preparing them for, first year of college when nobody sleeps and nobody eats or drinks very well. So
well, they drink pretty well.
They do drink pretty well, yes. But melatonin patches as a gateway to weed and all kinds of other stuff later on.
Absolutely.
There you go. But worth a certain schmuckery.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you, everybody.
Can I just jump in? I want to make 2 quick comments if I could. One is Joe said something about the Jewish tent being open. And as a Palestinian, I want to comment on that. I agree with him completely. I will spend tomorrow with my wife's family at Break the Fast. They are welcoming. Jewish people. I rant and rave about the Israeli government, and I despise what they're doing. But the Jewish people are fine people, and I'm honored to be at the family tomorrow. In terms of what Barb said about the demeaning of immigrants, let me point out that under the Trump plan, we're going to deport about half the food, the people who tend farms and pick food in America. Yep. You want to talk about increasing the price of food? Right. There's a plan.
Yeah. Right. Your kids are going to have plenty of work.
Thank you for both of those, Bill. And as we all know, you end up atoning the other 364 days a year. So at least
there's impossible atonement.
At least there's completion. Exactly. All right, everybody. Thank you again. Thank you, Beverly Watts. Thank you, Nancy Derringer. Thank you, Barb Ingalls. Thank you, Joel Sklar. Thank you, Bill Seikaly. And thank you, and with the last word always, Allan.
Oh, that was nice.
Drive home safely.
There we
go. Tigers. Go.